What's good, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons. And after we just went live for our latest post-game show, or should I say latest post-game therapy session, make sure to check it out if you haven't already, as the Mets unfortunately faltered tonight by a final score of 4-0 with no offense to show whatsoever. And in that show, I emphasized how much the Mets need to make changes, including the likes of guys like Joey Wendle at bare minimum. And since then, a lot of changes have actually happened. David Stearns is in fact listening, folks. The latest, based on all the latest reports, is as follows. David Stearns has in fact DFA'd, yes, Joey Wendle, because Mark Vientos will be returning to the Mets to split time with Brett Baty at third base and potentially more. We'll get into that in a second. And Joey Lucchesi will be called up to make his season debut for the Metropolitans tomorrow in Philly against the Philadelphia Phillies. Southpaw against Southpaw against Ranger Suarez there. Suarez is an absolute Mets killer. He is a dominant lefty that has been killing it so far this season, and I'm not looking forward to that matchup with the way that this team has been swinging the bat, but I am looking forward to seeing Mark Vientos out there, because with the Mets matched up with the likes of Ranger Suarez and other lefties later this week, that went in hand with their rationale, at least for the time being, to give Vientos a shot to see what he can do, especially against lefties, in which he absolutely mashes. Vientos, as we all know, was called up just over the past couple weeks and was fantastic as soon as he was brought up to the team, and we're going to get into all that and everything in between on this one, folks. But before I break down more on this, I definitely want to know your initial reactions in the comments down below to the Joey Wendle DFA. Yes, there is a baseball god after all, and yes, David Stearns does care. He is listening. He is cutthroat so far this season. Pretty much no nonsense, which is what I absolutely love about him, not just with this Mets bullpen, but now also with this Mets bench, and trying to make this team better tomorrow than what it currently is today. I mean, technically it is better today now that Vientos is here and Wendell is gone, but you know what I mean. These transactions haven't been made officially official yet. Either way, very excited to see Vientos back in the lineup and what he can provide for this team. Definitely want to see those reactions down below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already for the most consistent coverage and all things Mets here on YouTube, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY as the largest platform out here. Thank you all so much in advance for the endless support, folks. But as we get into this one, of course, shout out to my amazing sponsor, as always, at Sower MLB. We'll get into them in a little bit as well. But before I break that all down, let's emphasize here what we were just breaking down, okay? So Mark Vientos, when he was initially brought up to the Mets a couple weeks ago, he had himself a pinch hit in his first at-bat. He had himself another hit in his second pinch hit the next day. And then he had himself a massive walk-off home run for the Mets to salvage that series there against the St. Louis Cardinals. The next day, Vientos gets the start there in Chicago at third base, and he gets pulled later in the ball game. Joey Wendle has a run-costing play there. Instead of throwing a home, charging that thing, in which we all know even a Mark Vientos would have probably been able to handle there, and that goes in hand. It's kind of funny how Joey Wendle is being DFA'd now when that type of thing happened not all that long ago, with Vientos initially starting that game. But once that game was done and Starling Marte was back from the bereavement list, of course, Vientos was sent back down. And Mark Vientos in AAA this season has been absolutely raking. In 31 games to this point, he has himself 6 home runs, 31 RBIs, a 284 average, and a 876 OPS. He has been raking. He has been a quad A player so far, where really we don't really know if he's an everyday MLB player, but he sure as heck is in fact definitely good for AAA, if not among the absolute most elite there at that level. So Mark Vientos is going to now split time with Brett Baty, well, according to multiple reports, and this is not something that initially the Mets wanted to do to begin the season. That's why they gave Baty a leash, and that's why they had Vientos start in AAA, but they are in fact in favor of a youth movement, especially when it is justified. And Joey Wendle, after having now a stint where he had just over 200 average and around a 500 OPS with the Mets in a handful of games, today was his final start as a Metropolitan today, and hopefully his final start as a Metropolitan at any point this season, because I do not believe that a team is going to pick up Joey Wendle off waivers unless it's going to be a team like the Braves, as they did with Zach Short and others, just trying to get a playbook against a rival team that they certainly don't like. Aside from that, I have a feeling Joey Wendle is going to clear, and thank you, David Stearns, for listening to me. As many of you guys follow me on Twitter, if you haven't, make sure at WardyNYM. Same applies, of course, here on YouTube by hitting that sub button. I said yesterday, simply put, for the millionth time, get Joey Wendle off my team. And thankfully, just around 24 hours later, David Stearns did exactly that. So he will be either picked up or go outright to AAA level. But Joey Wendle, who provided no offense whatsoever, sometimes he get those slap for the opposite field hits, but you know, there's there's really not much to gain from that either. And Joey Wendle's defense as a utility man supposed to be, again, the backup option for Jeff McNeil there. Of course, at second base, he can handle some short if he really needs to. He can handle the hot corner. The problem is Joey Wendle isn't proficient in any of those positions. He had multiple errors for the Mets when they needed him to step up and be that utility defensive option. And when you cannot even be the one thing in a limited role that the team needs you to be, what role do you have on the roster, let alone in the organization? There is no room for you. It makes no sense. There's no gain. It's just a deficit by having him here. And that's what I broke down in my post-game therapy segment earlier. And now we're finding out the results. Joey Wendle again being DFA'd. And now we see Mark Vientos, who of course is 3 for 7 so far at the MLB level this season. Excited to do more here as he'll be splitting time with Brett Baty based on matchups at the hot corner for the time being. And unfortunately, this is kind of deja vu a little bit from last season where Brett Baty was initially given the keys there at the hot corner after they traded Eduardo Escobar, didn't do anything with it, and that's why he didn't have true security of the job throughout the whole season, with Mark Vientos, of course, having his stints as well. Even though Vientos played in a very limited sample size and was at DH more often than not, if my memory serves me correct. But the Mets want to get some decent looks at Vientos at the hot corner, because if he can handle himself, if he can at least be competent there and be a guy where we are not going to view as, okay, it's not like a JD Davis situation where he simply cannot play third base, at least when he was a Met. Of course, he turned things around for a year or so when he was with the Giants before they cut him now that he's with the Oakland A's. Getting on a tangent there, Wardy, let's get right back into this one. Okay, Mark Vientos, that we know is a guy that has had defensive hiccups so far in his career. David Stearns was not holding anything back when breaking exactly this down in a recent presser over the past week or two. But now that Vientos is back up on the team and Brett Baty has labored significantly with his barrel rate and, of course, the ability to drive and lift a baseball, he is unfortunately inducing more of those ground outs. And Baty, even when he wasn't swinging the bat for power as much, was having some nice stretches of brilliance there with getting on base at least 2 times a night with a single and a walk. I mean, we'll gladly take that right now from Brett, who's still trying to get himself going as an everyday MLB caliber player. But then Baty goes down with the hamstring injury, and he really hasn't been the same since. Of course, I shouldn't say that because he did have that massive 2 home run game, I believe, against the Tampa Bay Rays when we lost 8-7. Could be wrong if it was that game, but I'm pretty sure it was the Tampa Bay Rays series. My memory serves me correct. I mean, all these games feel like a blur already because they've been either 1 or 2 run losses each game, it feels like, for the past month outside of today, the 4-0 deficit, of course, even though the other 2 didn't happen until the 9th inning. But now that you have Mark Vientos here, it's going to be interesting to see how much he platoons with Brett Baty, and if Vientos is proficient enough at the hot corner and provides a better bat with more power and more gap-to-gap ability than what Baty gives you, then unfortunately for Baty's case, unless he steps up and gets a little bit of a fire under his you-know-what, he could be on his way out, at least with the current team being sent back down to AAA, unless the Mets decide to give him some more reps potentially in the corner outfield. But I feel like they aren't going to be bothering to do that all that much unless Baty truly proves that his bat is so good that you want to keep in the lineup, and Vientos' bat is so good and everyone's firing on all full cylinders, and it's okay if you have subpar defense. Even then, it really doesn't make much sense with how many outfielders the Mets already have on the team, 5 as is, if you want to include DJ Stewart, who is very much borderline at absolute best. But Marky V is up with the team now, and before we break down more on Joey Lucchesi and what is exciting about him now being called up for the Mets, what his potential role could be, let's hear a word from our amazing sponsors here on the channel. As always, the best MLB fantasy game out there at Sorare MLB. In case you guys and gals don't know Sorare MLB, simply put, it is the best fantasy game known to man at the moment. And I'm not just saying that because they're a great sponsor in the channel. I'm saying that because it's so much fun to play. It's like combining MLB The Show, if you guys love playing that, being your own GM, card collecting, and using virtual cards to build your roster to play in games, mixing that with actual MLB fantasy. Welcome Sorare MLB. The only differences between the actual video game like MLB The Show is that you're entering weekly tournaments twice a week, entering on Mondays and Fridays, and you are going to be building your squad with different rarities of cards that you can use. Of course, you can win these cards in these tournaments. You get them for free when you draft your team first to enter these tournaments. And if you do well in these tournaments and get upgraded to cards, you can sell these cards for real dollars on the marketplace, in the app, on your desktop, playing with your friends or playing with people around the globe. So you buy, sell, and trade, collect these cards, and these cards, how they perform when they're on your roster is based indicative on how the players perform in real life. So if you got guys that are are on absolute heaters right now, say Tyler O'Neill, for example, has been raking so far this season with Boston, or if you want to take, I know he's cooled off a bit, but Colton Cowser not all that long ago, when those guys were riding high, you want them on your team so that way you can maximize your points, do good in these tournaments, and then ultimately win cash prizes if you do well. Win Mets tickets, in which we gave away a bunch on the channel just over the past couple weeks to a couple lucky winners just for signing up to Sober MLB by clicking the link down below in the description and entering a free tournament. And today I'm going to show you guys real quick the latest team that I'm drafting for our next set of tournaments. So just give me 1 second. Let me minimize this. Okay, here we go, folks. So as we know, the Mets are facing the Phillies still for a couple more games, and this may sting to some of you, but don't worry. I have Zach Wheeler, Tyler Glasnow, and Luis Severino as my available pitchers. Sevy and Wheeler are both expected to pitch, so I'm going to utilize both of them. I'm going to put Sevy there in the first spot. Then I'm going with Edwin Diaz for my reliever. Edwin, please be competent and not what we just saw the other night. Then I'm going to take Mr. Brett Beatty out of the corner, even though we have no clue how much playing time he's going to get right now. Gunnar Henderson there because I let my O's. Brandon Nimmo, and we all have ourselves some Brandon. I'd argue the best hitter in the Mets lineup at the moment. Then we're going to end it with Adley Rutschman as the final hitter. And yes, Zach Wheeler there. Even if the Mets, I don't even know if the Mets match up with Zach Wheeler. I don't think that they do. I think it's right after this Mets series is one Wheeler pitcher, so that's even better. So that is the lineup that I'm rocking with my great friends at Sober MLB. And let me know how you guys do by signing up down below and entering your weekly tournaments. And again, shout out to Sober MLB. But let's hop back into this one and break down more on this, because now let's talk about Mr. Joey Fuego. Shout out to Joey Lucchesi. Shout out to his mom, Michelle, as well. She's a great supporter, and also just so many awesome Mets moms in the community too. Between Mama McGill, between Lucchesi, and plenty of others, they're absolutely fantastic. And Joey, we know he's been fantastic in limited sample sizes with the Mets. Last season, in just under 50 innings and around 9 starts, had himself a sub-3 ERA. Now, of course, if you look at the advanced numbers, the expected ERA was much higher by a run or two, so he did have some luck on his side, and we're never going to forget that dominant performance he had against the San Francisco Giants. As you see here, to my one side, it's going to be right there. There you go. Joey Fuego with a dominant outing there, including carving up a guy like JD Davis at the time, which we will gladly take, of course. But Joey Fuego this season there, the southpaw on the AAA level so far that we have seen, and right around 7 starts, has a 2.5 ERA, including 28 strikeouts and around 38 or so innings. So Joey Lucchesi has been looking great at the AAA level, and we all know he's Mr. Churv. He doesn't have too many things that are crazy about him. Has changed the arsenal up a little bit, though, that we have seen over the past year or so. So I'm excited to see what Joey Lucchesi can do. It's not going to be an easy task against the Phillies, but you do have a slight upper hand as long as you can locate your pitches well against the Kyle Schwarbers, of course, against the Bryce Harpers, those lefty-lefty matchups as well. But then you, of course, have to be very wary of a guy like Alec Boehm. Or, of course, if he does return to the lineup in this series, say as soon as tomorrow, a JT Realmuto. It will not be an easy start by any stretch for Joey Lucchesi in that batter's box at Citizens Bank Field, but still, I'm very excited to see what both Lucchesi can do now in this rotation spot. And thank you so much, Mets, Carlos Mendoza, David Stearns, for not having Adrian Hauser start tomorrow the way you initially reported a day ago that he was. Instead, the Mets had Adrian Hauser warm up there in the 9th inning today, which meant he would not be pitching at least as a starter tomorrow, and that is the right move. The last thing we need to see is a batting practice Adrian Hauser, the worst starter currently on the roster, who's been absolute batting practice to the Braves, to the Dodgers, to what? He's going to be anything different to a Phillies team that's been on an absolute heater, even when they've been dealing with ailments? Yeah, I'm not buying that whatsoever. So I really like these moves for the Mets. I'd argue that more should still be happening, especially on the offensive front, should they continue to labor. But for the time being, we'll see how the platoon goes between Beatty there and Vientos. If Vientos gets some reps at DH, because we know JD Martinez does not play every day. And also, what type of impact, if at all, does this have on a guy like DJ Stewart coming off the bench? Will this make his playing time even more limited now, or is it going to be around the same? Those are things that we will find out in the coming days throughout the week. But that'll do it, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to check out the previous post-game content if you haven't already, and stay tuned because we come at you live after every single Mets game throughout the course of the season. We come at you with plenty of pregame segments throughout the week as well. We're going to be pumping out watch parties in the near future too, along with taking live callers in our post-game segments. So I hope to see you all there. Until then, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your boy Wardy signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.